When it comes to explaining and understanding the nature of our place within this reality, it can be difficult to draw it all back to science. But what happens when we are actually able to? Our guest Kurt Hardesty shares his concept of neurokinetics, a biological grand unification theory to help explain how we perceive and experience reality with a Western vocabulary that can be practically understood and applied in our day-to-day lives. This is Skull Babylon, and you're about to listen to episode 75 of Paradigm Shift Radio. Without needing to say much about this revelation of an episode, we encourage you to help share Paradigm Shift Radio in order to ripple the information and awareness out further. This weekly show and the global project at ParadigmShiftCentral.com is a tool for any of us to use to help assist in the awakening of consciousness simply by sharing it with our friends and others. And of course, you can bring this impact into the physical even more so by ordering your supply of shift buttons through the main website to connect with others and to help build a local Paradigm Shift community where you are. Be sure to go back and check out past episodes through the main archive, but in the meantime, enjoy being in the present moment for this one as we continue to take steps towards becoming more conscious and helping to be the change we wish to see in the world. Enjoy the show.
If there's one piece of advice that's been given to me, something that really stuck with me, something that I have intentionally been trying to carry with me throughout the rest of my life, it's this. During my awakening, during my time out in Vancouver, I met a very interesting girl, and she told me with the utmost certainty as she looked into my eyes, she said, "Believe nothing, see everything." And it took me a while to really understand what she meant by that. But if you hear where she's coming from, the idea is simple. Empty your cup. So tonight, I think that's what we all should do. If we really want to be able to take in what's going to be on the agenda for tonight, and I assure you, it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth your time. This is going to be one that we're going to definitely be sharing with our friends. Then try that. Empty your cup. See everything. Believe nothing. Because you're tuned in for another awesome, inspirational, community-driven episode of Paradigm Shift Radio. And of course, this is your dedicated co-host coming at you for the special quarter quill edition of Paradigm Shift Radio. I'm Skull Babylon, aka Brendon Wolfshield Culton, aka Skull the Wolf, coming at you live from my bedroom in London, Ontario, Canada, as part of Paradigm Shift London, representing this awesome show that we got going on at ParadigmShiftCentral.com. And of course, if you aren't on the website now, feel free to browse it. Feel free to check that out during the show, and there will be a couple of show notes, just a couple of community news notes that I will be mentioning real quick right before we bring on our good buddy Kurt Hardesty, and talking about neurokinetics, a biological grand unification theory. So now don't be thrown off by the title. I mean, I think where I'll be coming from tonight is really working with Kurt so that we can develop clarity between him, his message, and us, the student in any case. So stay tuned for that. We will be getting into that. A couple things that I really just got to mention off the top in terms of true and just really awesome, wicked stuff coming at you is we got a little special competition going on through Paradigm Shift Radio. So there's actually 2 opportunities for people to win some shift buttons tonight. And for those of you who aren't familiar, check out the ParadigmShiftCentral.com/buttons part of the website, and the link for that's already in this show notes info through Blog Talk. And you can check out that these are tools to help us use to find others within the Matrix and to literally hack the Matrix and to make new friends. Buttons are a great thing. They're a great gift for this holiday season. So of course you can order some through the main website. Use the promo code PSR to get some bonus buttons. But if you want to win free buttons, I just gotta let you guys know that there is a special competition in special edition with this quarter quill edition of Paradigm Shift Radio for the 75th episode. If you go to the main Facebook page at facebook.com/Paradigm Shift Radio, and in particular, check out this image that I'm going to link into the live chat, you'll see that we got the Paradigm Shift mindfulness games going on. And basically that's using some awesome flash games through the main website that you can use while you're browsing the site. And if you beat the high score, which is currently 61,500 in the game of Geometry Wars Flash. So if you got some time to play that during the show, this is your last chance, because the highest score by the end of this episode will be the person to claim that batch of free shift buttons. So try and beat that score, and you guys let me know if you. I'll be keeping an eye on it. And like I said, you have until 11 p.m. tonight. So just before the show ends, highest score gets the free shift buttons. And of course, for those of you who aren't super into the video games, simply send a message to facebook.com/ParadigmShiftRadio and tell us that you are listening to the show, that you are, whatever your thoughts are on it. If you are just coming across it synchronistically, tell us how you happen to come across it, and simply send us a message, and we'll be doing a raffle by the end of the show with all the names from the current moment and also from the past episodes. So that's really just the big news that I got mentioned with you guys, just because I don't want to have to interrupt us once we get into the flow of Kurt and as we get going with that. And of course, like I said, we've got awesome stuff going on. If you haven't checked out Paradigm Shift Central, the Facebook page, check out that, because there's a lot of new inspirational video content going through the Video Inspirations Station, which is a whole thing that we got going on through the website. So again, there's a lot going on. But I'm really more interested in getting to what Kurt has to share with us tonight. And Kurt has been a guest on the past on Paradigm Shift Radio, not in a super formal way, just kind of in a last-minute way. But with this one, he approached me because he's been working on something new. And you can check out his Facebook page at neurokinetics, facebook.com/neurokinetics. And if you are interested in just like the idea of, well, you know what? I don't even want to try explaining it. I'm just going to let him explain it, and we're just going to bring him on, and we're going to go. And like I said, tonight's discussion is going to be a very, very interesting one. So without further ado, we're going to bring on Kurt Hardesty. So Kurt, if you're ready, bringing you on to Paradigm Shift Radio. Here we go. Hello, Kurt.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome back.
Hello.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, that was just sort of an informal introduction, but please just take a moment to introduce yourself to all the people out there who have a chance to tune into the show.
So I'm Kurt Hardesty. I don't know, I'm just a guy. I have a heavy science background, into mysticism and consciousness and all that stuff, and have been studying movement and meditation and all that for, I guess this thing that I'm going to be talking about is probably a 7-year effort between just about everything having to do with the mind and the body. And I don't really know what to say besides that.
Well, I think that sets it up. I mean, that is what this conversation is about tonight, the relationship between the mind and body. So, I mean, at this point, man, like, this is really like I said, my role, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the live chat. So if you guys got questions, PM me through the live chat. If you go on all the names on the right, send a message, right click, or just click on there and send a message to Paradigm Shift Radio, and I'll be monitoring any questions you got coming in. But yeah, like, so Kurt, okay, so this thing that you've been working on for 7 years, where do we start? Where would you like to start, just in terms of explaining?
I will start by saying, basically, it's a theory of how mind moves matter, or how mind moves objects anywhere. And so I'm talking about all movement that you see everywhere. This theory is supposed to cover that. So it's kind of a unification theory, but I'm into massage therapy and body work and healing and martial arts and movement. And so I've studied the human body probably more than anything. And I also have a molecular and developmental biology degree, so I know a lot of the stuff into there. And so over the past 7 years, this thing has been crystallizing in my head, and it's kind of a unification theory that starts at the level of our perception. So, you get things like string theory or even relativity and stuff like that, and it's like, where do I even begin to make any of those things relevant to my life? We're sitting here and it's like, okay, so it's everything's emptiness, or like time's distortion and all that, but we can't really sort of grasp any of that. So neurokinetics it's kind of an attempt. It started with me trying to understand fascia and just nerves in general, and then suddenly that crystallized out of it. And so it starts at the level of nerves and fascia and in tissue that we can cut and touch and see with a scalpel, and sort of feel the effects in our own body, and so it kind of is. It's been unfolding in my head even still. Like, as I write the book for it, it's almost like I'm the first person to get to read about neurokinetics. I don't even really feel like I'm writing it. I feel like I'm reading it and then transcribing what I'm reading. But it's relatively simple. So that's, I guess, what I'm doing there. Do you have any questions that would clarify that before I go forward? Hello?
There's one thing. Oh no, it's still here.
Okay.
So there's one thing that like I did notice within the live chat. Somebody sort of used the term lucid living. Have you sort of, I mean, are you familiar with that term? Do you think that's like sort of, because I mean what you're generally working towards is just the idea of like how can we be more conscious of the present moment and of how things work.
Well, this is how we can be more conscious of the present moment for sure, and that's the interesting thing about this theory as well, is because it's provided a physiological mechanism for like every single consciousness or meditative state, sleeping, awake, enlightened, seeing auras, heightened sensitivity, rainbow body even. This theory actually leads to and explains all of those. And so the cool thing about it is it explains them in a Western vocabulary, 100% Western vocabulary. This is scientific materialism. I wouldn't even call this metaphysics. I don't use a single woo-woo term like energy or chakras or anything like that. I can do all of that within our own vocabulary, the West's vocabulary. And so it provides a way to have a really clear training plan if you want to start meditating or something like that, because a lot of people sit down and to begin any of these various esoteric things starts with failure. And so not only are you failing, you also don't even really know what you're working for or why or how to even notice any signs of improvement. And so a consistent sort of meditative or spiritual practice that can lead to advanced sort of powers or insights or perception is a little bit more difficult to stick with than going to the gym. Because when you go to the gym, you kind of know what you're doing, and you know if you're like squatting more, you know that you're using your arms and your legs at least. Like when you meditate, you're using a body part that you don't even know if you've grabbed yet. And we're all using Eastern vocabulary, and so a lot of the times you can spend 10, 20 years or a whole lifetime and not actually ever learn how to meditate correctly. Or you can accidentally stumble onto it after 3 months and all of a sudden, boom. And so this theory is kind of for the Western mind, and anybody that kind of understands it, you know, I guarantee if you want, you'll know exactly how to sit down and train yourself and work with other people and all of that to attain the results that you want.
Yeah, I like where you're coming from. What you said, the idea of woo woo. You're one of the first people I remember. You came on the show last time and you used that term. I mean, yeah, some people would have a hard time trying to explain that stuff. That just it's easy to talk about, but it's hard to point to, kind of thing. But like what you said, you're breaking this down to a very scientific, method, formula, observation, like framework or whatever. But yeah, like I think that's what would be useful for the audience to be able to understand. Like I mean, even just that idea. So let's start breaking it down. This thing that even like the idea of chakras and energy, how would you go about explaining that and just fit this into your bigger theory as we just like continue to, our objective here, like if I were to set an objective, our objective here, our collective objective is to be able to just like understand how we can develop our relationship with our body through the mind and like through the present awareness. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah.
And more so?
Yeah, and well, I'm not accurate. I wasn't. Are we going? Anyway, before I could answer, like before I go into try and like explain like a particular phenomenon like chakras with it, I think I was just going to try and, so neurokinetics is based on basically 3 insights or just 3 principles. And those 3 principles sort of mix together almost like colors to create and explain various phenomena. So if we can go through the 3 principles, which will give, it requires, you know, some high school or college level biology to understand, but I think I can paint the picture pretty well verbally. And once those 3 principles are understood, then we can sort of basically pick any phenomenon anybody wants to think about and then use those 3 colors to sort of repaint it in a way, using the 3 principles that are grounded in Western vocabulary or Western thought.
Right. Okay. So the 3 things that you're talking about, what are they? Introduce us.
Okay, so the 3 principles, the first one is action potentials transmit an infinite amount of data to the body along their entire length, not just at the synapses. The second postulate is that action potentials and nerve firing patterns resonate each other through the folded nature of the nervous system. Alterations in these patterns can be facilitated via the physical movement of the connective tissue and the fascia. And the third principle is that the movement of the action potentials along the length of the nerve cells directly influences the quality, shape, and charge of the surrounding tissue in the body, influencing and directing the order and structure of nearly everything in the body. So I'll just run through those real quick and stop me if it gets confusing at any point as I explain all that stuff.
Okay, all right.
So postulate 1 is action potentials transmit an infinite amount of data to the body. So I'm saying that, most people think that you have a nerve, say in your toe, and it goes up to your brain through your spinal cord. And when you touch your toe, that nerve goes from firing at 10 hertz to maybe 15 hertz, and then your brain interprets that data as, okay, my toe's being touched. That's the sort of traditional way that they think nerves work. That action potential, as it moves along the length of the nerve, actually is a charge, and so it has a correlated field around it. And as that field moves through the whole body, it's moving through the fascia, which mixes in with, well, actually, forget the fascia. As it moves through the body, it's changing the resting membrane potential of every cell that it's bordering, right? So every single cell in your body carries a charge differential on the outside of it, and that acts as like a little battery or a capacitor. So the cells pump, I believe, negative ions to the outside, and they pump positive ions to the inside, and so that creates this charge thing, and then various cellular machineries and everything use that charge differential to run a lot of the processes of the cell. So many things in your body are run via this electrical grid around each cell and around each neuron. And so what makes nerves special and other nerves like that is that they can carry this action potential, which allows this big sort of depolarization or spike event travel along the length of that charged membrane. So every single cell in your body has this electrical field, and nerve cells have the ability to conduct what is basically a wave or a large wave or a large current along this electrical field. And so picture every nerve in your body firing at anywhere between 1 to a couple hundred hertz. I think I read a paper to where they were postulating the nerve could be firing at 1,000 hertz. That could be like the maximum or the minimum reset time. And so you've got so many nerves in your body that if I dissolved everything else about you, like you could still be visually recognized. Like your shape would be there 100%. It wouldn't be just sort of this halfway filled in thing. It would be easy to tell it was you. So picture that much innervation, and then all these electrical pulses are firing. The nerve cells, the way that the properties by which the waves propagate through the nerve cells change depending on what their resting membrane potential is. So you've got these charges flying by each other, and as they fly by the nerve, they are changing the resting membrane potential of the neighboring nerves as they go by. And so that changes the properties of that nerve, which changes the signals coming from that nerve. And so you get this big electrical system, and you picture all these point charges flying through it with a surrounding field that gets weaker as it goes away from it. So each action potential is disturbing the entire electric neighborhood around itself. And some of that neighborhood is cells, so it's altering your normal cells' resting membrane potential as it goes by. Some of that neighborhood is other nerve cells, so it's changing how those things are conducting. And so basically all these action potentials are just ripping through your body, and they are waves, making huge waves through all the charged tissue in your body, which is every living cell. Every cell that is alive has this electrical membrane around it. And so if you learn how to read that, this theory, my theory of consciousness, or from meditation, I guess, it appears that I'm aware of all the electrical activity in my body. And so the louder and the more polarized it is, like the more I'm conscious of it. So I'm reading all of this that's going on. And so like that sensation in your toe is disturbing everything, and it's interacting with the sensations from your hands, and it's interacting with the sensations from your thought, and you can see how there's like a distributed, basically a nerve affects not just the whole cable, but it has this diminishing area of impact. An electromagnetic field diminishes at some rate away from the charged particle, but it basically goes out to infinity. So all of these nerve pulses are sort of weakly changing everything in your body every time they fire. And so that's a huge amount of parallel processing and a huge amount of data. And it's a totally different view than the current theory, which just says nerve activities are basically transmitting data like a fiber optic cable, and the brain's just reading a bunch of ones and zeros. Like it's a hugely analog, resonant flux field of data happening from all the nervous synapses.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye on the live chat, and this is related actually. So Kevin Gray is just asking the live chat, and he's kind of reflecting what literally you just summed up there to answer the question. But he said, so instead of a static traditional model, we have a dynamic model of energy traveling through the body. Everything is interconnected. And I think that is the very interesting thing about this is often on Paradigm Shift Radio, that is what we were talking about is like the unity, the oneness, the interconnectedness of everything. But where Kurt's coming from, you're talking about that just like you said, without the woo-woo and looking really getting down to the science of it.
And so here's the fascinating thing, right? So I'm saying that everything in the body is electrical, but for some reason, we're not aware. Why are we not aware of all that?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so that's what the theory sort of starts to explain, because a lot of the electrical activity is weak. But let's was that first point pretty clear? Like, did I paint that picture of like it's actually I just made the picture more clear for myself because it's like every living cell in your body has that electric battery force field of electricity around it. Like this is. Go Google resting membrane potential. This is not some woo-woo thing. This is molecular biology, and it runs most of the machinery in your cells. It's around every single cell, all of them. All of them are touching. All of them are doing the same thing, and then you have these nerve cells snaking through everything, and basically these nerve cells are creating big old waves of electromagnetic force that's rippling through your whole body with each pulse, and the frequency of those pulses is changed by your thoughts, sensations, memories, whatever.
Yeah,
along with a heartbeat.
Yeah, definitely.
Picture what the heartbeat is doing as it moves through that sort of electromagnetic ocean, right? We'll get into that.
Definitely.
Does that make sense so far?
Well, let's ask the live chat. So live chat, I'm reading it and it looks like they're getting it, especially within that last little bit. I know even with an episode like this, it's going to be worthwhile to go back and listen to it more than once, for myself included. And like basically, if this is if anybody in the live chat, if you guys were able to make sense of that, if it sounded good to you, then post an 1111 in the live chat, and we'll see those come through in the next couple moments. But one thing I was going to say, so like Kurt, I guess for my own personal question, so. When we're sitting down, we're just doing our thing, and if we're just like eating breakfast, we're not really paying attention to like what every single part of our body feels like. It's almost as if we have like, I've talked about this before. The body definitely works through like filters. Does the concept of filters really does that tie in with what you're talking about here?
Yeah. Well, we can get into that. Like seriously, man, That's where this gets cool. Once you get the three postulates down, like all questions are answered.
Yeah, because it sort of gets in the idea of like just how much is being filtered, and and that's what I'm really curious about. Reality is very, very. It's much more hyper than people realize, I think. So, yeah. But yeah, anyway, Kurt, we're getting some 1111s in the live chat from quite a few people, so that was adequate.
Cool.
At this point,
the next two are actually totally. They're probably a little bit easier, but basically, so. Action potentials and nerve firing patterns resonate with each other through the folded nature of the nervous system, like especially in the brain. So this is the one that this is a little bit harder for me to paint a picture in words, but if you can grab, or if you want to, I don't know, you don't have to grab a sheet of paper, but picture a sheet of paper, and then imagine that on that sheet of paper is a bunch of nerves just traveling straight along its length. And so the one end of the paper is the beginning of the nerve cell, and the other end is the end, and the action potential starts at one of the ends. So you start it, and then it travels linearly across the paper, right? So then take the paper and sort of fold it so that it, looks like it's a scroll, or it's rolling or whatever. So you don't form it into a circle, but you fold it in half so that the middle, like the first and last.
That shape has a name. What's that called? I know what you're talking about. It specifically has.
So anyway, you fold the paper so that like the first and last third are touching, right? And that's a new synapse. So you send your nerve potential through it again, and you'll notice that it travels along the paper linearly, and then it can also jump at that synapse right there and sort of jump ahead. So if I fire in a ... what'll start to happen is I'll get a ... and then after that fold, I'll get a ... and then the original one traveling linearly will catch back up to it. So each time I fold it, I'll get a repeat of those dots. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about, and I'm gonna actually run a Google search on the name of that shape, because I want to be able to show, what is it, like Google, like infinity loop shape. That should, there's something. So, go ahead, just keep talking.
Imagine if you took those imagine if you took those folds and made a bunch of them. And so you've got this big long neuron traveling along the paper, and you keep sort of looping the paper back and forth so it keeps touching itself. And you'll notice that at each one of those synaptic junctions, that nerve signal can be repeated or modulated or changed or something else like that. At each one of the folds, where the folds touch as it travels linearly, whatever pattern was started at the beginning is transmitted, and it skips the linear path. And so that starts to create a sort of echo going forward. And you can notice that, like, as the one that's taken the linear path goes around and meets the synapse on the other side, there's also the chance to connect it and shoot it backwards, sort of the way that it came, via another nerve going in another direction, another path going in another direction. So these folds are what allows you to sort of see a pattern and resonate it with itself, or remember. You see how, like, you allow it to project ahead, and suddenly you're like sort of projecting ahead, and then you can shoot it backwards too.
Okay, I figured it out. Kurt, are you talking about a Mobius strip? Is that?
No, but
okay.
Actually, it might. It's a Mobius strip, but you can jump between Mobius strips.
Yeah. Like the Mobius strips are close enough to get together that the signal can jump the gap.
Basically, it's a bunch of touching, like the folds in your brain or the circuits in your brain are sort of like a bunch of Mobius strips that you've cut out, and then you just kind of throw them all into your brain, and anywhere that they're touching, there's a synaptic junction, and it can jump and go into that other Mobius strip and sort of be repeated or amplified or shot back out. And so that's kind of each brain fold and each synaptic junction that is fold determined or whatever is sort of this place to where the action potentials of the data can be sort of shot forward or backwards. And you can kind of picture this in your head. It's huge. It's creating, imagine that pattern that I drew of the body and the nerves. And so then in your skull and in your head, you've got an insane amount of electrical activity, like resonating forward and backwards and sideways. And then it's like almost, it's impossible to talk about. You can kind of picture it if you've got a good mind. I think it goes pretty multidimensional, actually, if you were to visualize the field.
Well, I think one thing to sort of keep in mind, again, you said it's like different from a Mobius strip, but I think the thing with the Mobius strip, I think this does work into this, is that what's very peculiar about it is that there's only one side to it. Like if you keep your finger and run it along a path, it gets back to where it was and covers like the other side too, which is like what you're saying.
So
the signal can be sent forward or backwards, and it still gets.
It's a fractal Mobius strip, to be honest. This thing is a fractal Mobius strip. It's like traveling along a Mobius strip, but at any point on your journey, you can enter another Mobius strip. And and then infinitely divided, and it's kind of it's imaginary. You see, like you can get these things. Crap, I just pictured it actually better. You can
figuring it out live.
As you think, like the fact that you can like picture a fractal, like just picture a square going into a square, going into a square, and keep zooming in on that. Like that's your nervous system firing along basically what amounts to a Mobius strip to create that vision in your head.
Yeah. Okay.
So you've got this ability to have these infinity loops in your nervous system up there in the brain, and so that's all done by fascia. Like what determines if you're going to go on another Mobius strip or whatever is if the synapse is touching, and so you actually move those. Picture all the folds and stuff in your brain. That stuff is actually moving, and that alters how all the neural activity resonates through all these sort of Mobius strips of the synapses up there. And that's how you think different thoughts and do different things. And so that's why it takes some time to learn, is because you're actually learning how to move physical. You're kind of juggling and tossing these resonant patterns back and forth between different processing centers to create speech and language and stuff like that. And it's a physical movement. So our thinking is done by our fascia sort of contracting and wiggling and connecting various centers and lobes and stuff together. And the faster that we can do that, the faster we can think. And this has always been like one of my sort of skills that I didn't know it. Like I can feel myself thinking, and it feels very physical to me. I literally can see myself sort of jumping and moving between stones and like lifting or holding patterns, and like when I'm ungrounded and stuff like that. And I can see it in other people too, and kind of tell if they're you can tell if somebody's using a logical fallacy because their mental body mechanics are off. And like, so if you poke it, they sort of like break, and you can kind of feel it if you're sensitive.
Yeah. And I like where you're coming from with a lot of this stuff, and it is making sense for me the more we talk about it. And again, if people have questions in the live chat, do not hesitate to send a private message to Paradigm Shift Radio through the live chat, and we'll get those to be able to help clarify. One thing I was going to mention, a lot of people sort of forget this, that like the brain itself, you could like unfold that to like the size of like a pizza or bigger, like a table napkin sort of thing, and then it's like strategically like squished up in a similar way that he's talking about with like the strips like being like right next to each other without actually having to be like one in the same thing, so that you have like more area. And then that just creates like so much room for all this processing to take place. I mean, Kurt, like I want you to be able to tell us like whether does that add in with
that's sort of it. I mean, we can actually diverge into here for a second and get
go for it.
Paint a brief picture of how thinking and perception works, like how we generate objects.
Yeah, because that's what I was interested in. Even when you just mentioned like the idea of, I mean, for anybody listening to this right now, just try doing that. Like imagine yourself moving your right hand, like opening and closing it without moving your right hand. And I mean, people have sort of seen those studies where like if the mind imagines something, it's still like the same. It shows up the same in the brain, sort of thing. Or maybe I don't know. Kurt, is that what you? But yeah, just go ahead. I mean, don't just answer me, but.
Okay, so basically, like to experience an object, right? So when you want to open your crown chakra, or basically sort of experience a less thought state or a less self state, you can literally sort of put and this is why it's cool, because I can point your mind so much. But like you sit on the cushion every day and just chill out there, and just kind of, you don't want to visualize or imagine because that adds to the noise, but you just kind of want to generate a feeling of like literally your mind opening. Like that will actually, is what I think is happening, is that the folds in your brain actually sort of like relax and kind of fall apart, and that stops them from resonating. And so basically the way that you perceive an object is that you can't ever see something the first time you see it, basically. And until you understand something, you can't see it very well because you're dealing with this huge amount of electrical activity in your body, and you're conscious of all of it, right? So you have to make things stand out, and you do that by some part of you, I don't know where, it can like see something, and then that perception and that sight and that sound and that taste of that object come in, and they start just bouncing back through all this electrical activity forever. You know, they change the shape of the tissue, and that pattern is just sort of in there, bouncing around. And then if that pattern comes in again, especially soon afterward, because the pattern gets weaker and more diffuse the longer it's in there. But if you see an object and then you see an object again, that object actually sort of collides with itself. And when that happens, I think there is a simultaneous there's a resonance and an interference around that object, and so there's an interference pattern that causes that object to seem separate, and then there's a resonance pattern sort of near the middle of it that causes the object to seem brighter, and then it comes into your perception. And so once you've caught that thing, or actually I think when that comes into your perception, you learn that pattern, and then when you learn to think, which is recreating these patterns for yourself, right, with the original sin or whatever, trying to do this yourself. When you think, like you've experienced a perception of, say, like a dog or whatever, when you think the perception of dog, it makes that pattern more solid, and it does that by interfering with the actual dog. So you get a black spot where there would be life. So you can use the thought to make the pattern stick out better, and that's how you sort of track objects. You're thinking, you're literally as if somebody's running across a football field, you're actually, as you recognize it and say the object person, the concept of person, you're sending out that's pinging off of the person, and it makes them stand out more, not by illuminating their true nature, but it makes them stand out more by interfering with it, because you're sending out sort of the anti-code. So that's the meditation allows more of the actual thing to come in. And then when you start thinking about it to sort of recall it or make it more clear, you're actually sending out the anti-code to it, which dampens it.
Interesting.
Is that following that?
Yeah, no, that's kind of a paradigm shifting idea just there in itself. Like, I'm just thinking of the idea of just like looking at someone who you know, sort of thing, and thinking like, are you literally seeing them in what they are, opposed to just your perception of them, sort of thing. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. So this is why the Western mind is sort of like effed itself over, is because we're in this process of like trying to freaking know what everything is, and that knowing, it's almost like a submarine with sonar. And you have passive sonar and active sonar, and active sonar scares the shit out of all the fish. And so it pings out and sort of lets you see what's there, but the more you use it, the further away everything from you gets. And then the meditation and all that is sort of a passive sonar, which if you scale up your passive sonar to a high enough level, it's almost as good as it's better than the active sonar, because it's actually tuning into what's really happening, whereas the active sonar, aka thought, is moving everything around. So even this theory over time will become inaccurate, because it'll change our sense of self or what we are doing, and then it won't work, because if everyone starts thinking about it. So
everyone starts thinking. That's kind of, just not to get sidetracked, but the idea came up in our last Paradigm Shift London meeting that we had, just our regular open-minded discussion and meditation circles. And of course, I didn't mention at the top, but like the whole point of this show is also the global network of physical paradigm shift communities. So if you like this conversation, if you want to find other people in your community to talk to about this stuff, then check out the main website, everything you need there. But what I was going to say was something that came up in the discussion group was the idea that the universe always seems to always like be just a step ahead of us. And that, in fact, like, questions are where it's at, because we'll never actually, like, ultimately, like, get everything. As we figure something out, universe will, like, develop something even more complex beyond our current comprehension of it, which is, Kurt, what do you think about that idea? Is that sort of...
Well, no, I think we always are, like, we are that thing. It's like the thought, when you identify with the thought, you're looking at yourself in the past, so you understand the thought. It's like, it's only once you identify with the thought does the universe look like it's becoming this like ever more mysterious, complex thing. Like, you're right on top of it. It's not unknown. It's only when you're like on the leading edge of this thing, and basically you're taking dumps, and those things are thoughts.
Eloquently put. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to get stuck in them. But one more. Okay, so this third, we'll just get into the third principle, and it can be more open-ended.
We got a couple more questions after that.
So the action potentials along the length of the nerve cell directly influences the quality, shape, and charge of the connective tissue in the body. So as the electricity is actually causing physical changes, obviously, because otherwise, like, how do you move your arm? It causes physical changes, but it causes them in the fascial layers, and regular nerve activity will start to induce a charge in the body, which is the really cool thing about the theory, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Anything
the
more?
baseline.
Go ahead.
And,
okay.
and then this is the cool principle that all three of those merge into really quickly. So, like every cell in your body, you know how you have those alpha, beta, delta, gamma brainwaves?
Yes, so I've been told.
Yeah. So we have those brainwaves. Like, you have this, and every cell in your body has this sort of background firing state that alters when it's stimulated or depressed. And so everything's just, the electrical activity is going at this very regular rate in your body. And if you're not agitated, it creates these sort of standing waves in your body. And this is one of the things that people feel when they meditate. If you just chill out, like, imagine all those nerve cells going off at whatever hertz. Maybe it's 432. Who knows? When they create like a weird sort of, it's those lights that go in bicycle tires, and this is the only metaphor I've come up with it, and you can like spell a word or something like that, or it looks like there's one light on the tire, because it's blinking, right. It looks like it's moving in a slower way, right?
Okay.
So all your nerve cells are kind of blinking like that, and orchestrated together, it creates these like slow little standing waves to where they all stack up at one point. And then where they all stack up slowly moves. And it sort of scans down your body, and you can feel it. And these things you've got a really slow one, and you've got a sort of medium one, and you've got a little faster one than that. And that's what I think people work with in craniosacral. And as these standing waves move through the body, they sort of cause the connective tissue and the fascia to become charged. And as far as I can tell, it also causes a little bit of a constriction in it. So it's physically changing the fascia. But as these waves go through the body regularly, and then when you've got like a sensation, or you get startled or anxiety or any sort of dissonance in there, it causes these standing waves to kind of become staticky, and they break up. But when these waves are moving through the body in a regular fashion, the fascia, which is also distributed throughout your whole body.
Can you just explain fascia? I know some people had asked.
Fascia is everything that holds you together. It's your structure. It's your tendons. It's the stuff around your muscles. It's the scaffolding that your skin is on. It is wrapped around your bones. It's wrapped around every single organ. There's sheets and layers of it, like it separates your abdomen from your chest cavity, and there's another one that separates your chest cavity from your throat. And there's fascial links, like your brain's wrapped in fascia, your spinal cord's wrapped in fascia. And the fascia has piezoelectric properties, according to some researchers. And I think with regular electrical movement moving over them, as far as I can tell, the fascia starts to polarize. Like, it starts to carry a charge the same way that if you rubbed wool over glass, I think, or felt over glass, or like just a magnet over a nail. Like, so the nervous system, when it's firing at these sort of resting state frequencies to where you're doing nothing, because your thinking gets in the way of it, your activity gets in the way of it, everything that you do gets in the way of it besides listening, these regular waves start to wash over your body, and as they do that over time, your fascia starts to become more and more polarized. Normally, fascial polarization takes touch or sensation, which is where you get the massage or like taking a hot bath or something like that. But when you do it meditatively, it starts to become more and more and more charged until you start feeling it without any sensation. And that is basically what happens, I think, when people have their first awakening or sort of satori, is that their brain somehow chills out for a second. It doesn't take too long for the fascia to polarize. You literally have to just stop interfering for a couple of minutes or seconds. And then the fascial polarization basically means that it's sort of alert enough for it to be part of your conscious nervous system activity without it being stimulated, and you start to see the disturbances of your action potentials and the disturbances and like just this huge impact that everything is having on your whole body, because you're not just reading the nerves. Like once the fascia turns on, you start to really be able to feel that cacophony that I described earlier, and it makes you feel like you're connected to everything because everything is causing this huge change in your electrical system. So by chilling out and letting these natural brain rhythms come over, because you're wired to do this, like unless I think there's probably a small percentage of the population that maybe has a problem or something that couldn't do this if their brain rhythms are just naturally disharmonious. But most people, if they just chill out and do something like Vipassana for long enough, and also don't carry any anxiety with them throughout the day, like they'll start to polarize. And then that turns on their connective tissue, and suddenly they have a whole nother nervous system and a whole nother sensory suit. And this is also where the meridians travel. Everyone's using their fascia electrically. It's just that most of it's, if it's not polarized enough to where it's as loud as your nerves, then you don't hear it. So you can't feel your chakras or your energy system, because it's, all the chakras and stuff are traveling through this big electrical grid that I'm describing, not just the fascia, but like your bones and your blood, and everything conducts electricity. And a lot of researchers have proved it, like over in Russia, and they've come up with like similar theories because they've noticed this big electrical dance. But nobody's really figured out what it is that makes some people aware of this big electrical dance or not. And so the chakras and stuff is like looking at the electricity of the body and the fields and how those fields are interacting. But in the process of meditation is to make the subtle things in your body, you have to polarize them enough such that their charge builds up to the same level as your nervous system.
Cool.
That makes sense?
I mean, yes, it is making sense.
And then that's also where the pain body comes from. Like, a lot of people wake up, I think Eckhart Tolle called it the pain body or something like that, but a lot of people wake up and there's like a huge emotional or physical pain, and you store a lot of your memories and stuff in this electrical grid in the nature of your body. So all of the things.
Oh, Kurt, you still there? Check. Okay. Here's that. Kurt may have gone silent. Okay,
what?
But he's still there. All right, no, you literally went silent just for a few seconds, but it's okay, folks. He's still with us. People freaking out in the chat. It's like, the Illuminati's after him. I don't know. Anyway, do you feel that like the information you have, like, I mean, how applicable, how practical would this be if we were to get this into like mainstream media news? If people, what could you do?
To be honest, dude, like, you know what my endeavors right now, my main focus in life is trying to save the world or whatever, is like, right. I'm literally working on trying to like float. Like, I shit you not. Like, I think it's possible. Like, using the neurokinetics theory, like, I'm literally, like, my meditative practices, my physical movement practices, like, I'm trying to do, give me 20 years and, like, I'll be floating. Like, that's how I'm going to change the paradigm, you know?
Dude, man, if that can get up on YouTube, oh man.
I know.
I think
there's a lot of people that get this already. Like,
I've always thought meditation was
cool. What's interesting about neurokinetics is that, like, it's, like, I figured it out outside of like a mystery school, but it's leading to all the same practices that I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Like, it's nothing new. Like, everything that I've kind of contrived on it is a known city or a known power or a known practice. Like, so people get this, and it's a means of, like, after I figured it out, like, you can really spot how people are like controlling everything and all that. So there's a whole world of people out there that already know this,
Mm-hmm.
and it's almost obscure.
Well, okay, there's a lot of.
Anyway, Illuminati what?
There's a couple of exciting directions I know that we can still get to, and we are at the 1 hour
mark. We can go totally anywher from here. Like, it literally will build into sort of anything.
Well, okay, on my plate, some of the things I would like to talk about more is just like the idea of levitation and how is that possible, so to speak, and sort of explain from your end of things. And also, even going back to what we were talking about earlier, somebody was just like going back to the idea of chakras. I'd be curious as to like how you would explain something like chakras, so to speak. And also, just kind of a quick question coming back from Kevin, and you mentioned the term Satori, which is the Zen Buddhist word for enlightenment, but he was just kind of pulling up some information on it and the idea of it seeing into one's true nature. And he also had a question. He said, so what comes first, the Satori that changes the body, or the body that allows the change for Satori, so to speak? I'd be curious to hear your response on that, and also just generally getting out some practical tips, some practical like advice and directions that people listening to this will be able to like literally bring into their immediate reality, like starting right at the moment that they hear the ideas and stuff. So do those sound like some pretty interesting?
We can go into I guess the practice that I would say would generate that without. So the Satori thing is like, there's various methods or whatever that people have done to bring about this, and basically like it's when you get out of your own way. So you literally have to stop interfering with your brain activity. Like, you have to stop doing that. Your brain is our brain, we use it for thinking and all that, and that's not what its actual purpose is. The human mind is there as an almost oh shit buffer in case we fall out of the meditative state, because our body is so complex. Like, if you get depolarized for some reason through fright, fear, or trauma or something like that as an animal, the human mind is capable of, like, if it just sits there, it fires off at these soothing frequencies. That's why you have to go to sleep at night to rebuild your body's electricity or whatever. But if it's left alone, it will like basically kickstart your car. Like, it's almost like if you stall your car out, the brain is the ignition. If you stall your body, the brain is the ignition. And it's got this interesting battery component to it. And we've kind of cheated because, the human body is supposed to operate like a capacitor, and we started to use this battery more and more and more. And so we're using the battery not just to start the car, but we're using it to try and get through life. And so basically, when you do any sort of Zen meditation or Vipassana, you're trying to sit there and let the brain do its own thing. As it does its own thing, it will naturally start to rub over your connective tissue and the fascia and the rest of your body in this soothing way, in the correct way. It will automatically witness your whole body by itself. You don't have to do anything. It's totally sending out everything exactly how it's supposed to get to every single nook and cranny of yourself over and over and over in the right order, so that becomes more sort of electrified. Once that thing gets up and running, your fascia sort of just turns on, and then you start feeling. That's when you start feeling just like you're electrical. Everything else is electrical or field or one, and so as you get more polarized, you start to see. You can see it because it's bright. That's the whole nature of like the duality thing is that the oneness does just manifest into two. So you just allow it to become two, and then as you allow yourself to be yourself, then the charge differential in your body, everything starts to become brighter and brighter and brighter because you're allowing it to polarize, so you see everything. And when you see everything, if you haven't been seeing everything, then you feel very, very awake. the colors get brighter, all of your sensation gets more because you start using your whole body to do everything. You start using your whole body to hear and your whole body to think and feel and see and all that. Like
I
once
love
you
that
get
idea.
this system online, hello?
Yeah, no, you're still good.
Like,
Keep going.
Once the main system is online, you can think without it screwing up your higher consciousness state. Because you're thinking with your whole body, so it becomes impossible for you to think out of resonance with yourself, which is why, like, when you really get the process going, it gets incredibly difficult to lie or to do a job you don't like or to do anything that, like, goes against yourself, because you start using your whole self. So that's and when you get really powerful at this, like, well, yeah, we'll leave. Okay, so you start just being yourself, which is all that, and you have to witness everything. So it's not like you're going to be feeling any better. Like, you're going to feel shitty, because like when your whole body turns on, you're aware of all the bullshit, shitty pain and all the things that you did and the effect that it had on your body, which usually takes a couple of years to iron out. Which I'm in the middle of that process, sort of myself. And it, like, I think Adyashanti said it took him, I think, 7 years from what he called his, like, big pop or his big awakening to when he felt like his enlightenment was really, really embodied. And according to the neurokinetic theory, is what that process is that once you turn on, you realize that no matter what the pain is, like, it's better to be awake, pain-free. But as you turn on, you realize just how jacked up your body is on the inside and the outside, or wherever you hold your trauma. Like, I look really good on the outside. I'm in great physical shape, but, like, on the inside, I've got knots and tension and trauma and all this crap everywhere that I'm just constantly aware of. So once you wake up, you're naturally drawn towards healing of various sorts, be it body work or massage or chakra healing or just something to get all this pain out. So awake people are much more into health and all that other stuff, because you don't hide from it anymore, and so you stop accumulating it, but then you also have a giant backlog of it.
Yeah, well, that would be
sense.
That would be something that I think is worth just putting a little bit more attention to get some ideas out of that. Like the idea of what you said, that we can have, like, sore muscles and sore physical body parts, but we sort of forget that there's, like, the energetic body that literally just, like you said, it sort of gets tangled is sort of the way how things would be used as a metaphor. It's
only a physical body. It's only your physical body. Like, energy outside of you is not tangled, right? It's like, your physical body is distorted from what you do. Like, what you do changes it. And so that distortion, like, it's
okay. Well, my question would be, and maybe this will help, is what are some ways that people can go about, like, helping unknot those knots that are sort of in our bodies?
Just get a massage stick and unknot them. It's easiest to work with it physically. Like, the people that work with themselves, I think, psychologically are more asleep, because they're like, I have a psychological issue and I don't know why. And it's like, you can work at it that way, but it's like a really weak handle on the issue. That psychological issue is more likely a nerve impingement or a giant block somewhere. And so, if you're actually honest, that's the whole process, right? So, like, until you are willing to be 100% honest with yourself, 100% real, 100% non-trying, and really wake up, and when that happens, like, you're accumulating more damage to yourself than any healer will be able to do. Like, so all of until that point, psychologically, like, if you have any lies in you, it's causing you to live them daily. It resonates in your career or your love life or your relationship or whatever else. That dishonest resonation carrying through your nervous system is wreaking more havoc on your body than any team of healers is going to be able to really undo. They will be able to move it around or something like that, but it won't. It's like trying to plug a breaking dam. so if people are really interested in healing, like, know thyself, and you can do that through exercise, through meditation, through eating healthier, or what have you, or even getting healing. But until that point, I would make it, all those processes you're doing them to find yourself, or to be honest, or to be real, or something. And then after that point, you can, like, basically you only need to do massage. You don't need to go to a therapist or a psychologist or anything. You just have to, it's changed something to your body. You're not that. You're not your past. You're not your body either. So you fix what you can in your body. And if it's something like your spine's out of alignment permanently, then you learn to accept it and shape your fascia around it so that it becomes a functional part of you.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Yes.
Other people, like, it gets into a different realm. Like, I'm somewhat hardcore in that sense, and, you're getting into the realm of, like, you don't want to let yourself go crazy. You don't want to end up, maybe you do. Like, there's a lot of different routes that, to be honest, is a destruction of yourself. So it's really up to the individual if they can destroy themselves and keep their job, or if they can destroy themselves and keep their sanity. I'm not an expert in that, and I've seen people use all sorts of avenues, and I don't know which one is the best or the healthiest.
So what are your thoughts on just something like Reiki, like hands-on energy healing? Like what are your thoughts in terms of that's effectiveness, and if so, like what is actually happening there in terms of, like, healing the body?
It determines on the practitioner, right? So, and it also is the client. For a person that's what I'll call highly depolarized, for somebody that is not feeling their body very much, for somebody that is extremely dishonest, we all have different degrees of polarization, right? Let's say that the enlightened state is like 51% polarized, right? People that are, like, really not living their life, they don't have much of an electrical grid to work with. Like, it only blinks on at certain parts. Like, imagine if I had a bunch of Christmas lights attached to me, and I was running around at night, and, like, if I'm really dishonest, like, those lights only flicker like once a minute. If I'm really honest, they're flickering 60 times a minute. So it's easier to
real?
find me.
You're not joking when you say that? Like, where do you get unplugged into? I'm confused.
Never. Okay, it's a metaphor.
Okay.
So,
I don't
like,
know, Kurt. I don't know with you sometimes.
If a person is not, like, resonating with themselves very much, it screws up the wave patterns moving through their body, even at night. They'll have, like, nightmares, so even their sleep won't be restful, and so their body won't repolarize very much, and you get more and more unhealthy. And so if you're really depolarized, if you have a ton of anxiety, if you're pulling your hair out, if you're just diseased, or if you're a liar or a cheater or a stealer and you know it and it's giving you anxiety, that screws up that rhythmic brainwave activity. And so your fascia becomes barely electrical at all. Like, I think it really screws up your resting membrane potential of your cells, which that's what the Reiki needs to work. Because the Reiki is working in that energetic field. So the Reiki practitioner needs a strong field. And if they're really good, they can kind of induce a stronger one in the client. But if the client is just really depolarized, then they're not going to get a benefit from Reiki. They're going to get a benefit from not lying, from going to the gym, from eating an honest diet, from, like, all these other things. And so a lot of people go to the energy healing, like, you have to polarize yourself before any of the Eastern energy modalities will be very effective on you, unless you're working with somebody who is powerful and rare. Like, a really rare healer can generate a strong enough field to induce polarity in their clients, but most of the energy workers are directing your polarity with a slight induction of it. It takes a lifetime of work to become one of those master healers that can induce polarity.
So can you sort of just asking obvious here, but can you explain, like, break down what you mean by polarity and by polarizing?
By polarity,
ourselves?
I mean,
like, what does
the
that
sum
mean?
total of the charge. Like, what I speculate using neurokinetics is that as those brain rhythms and waves move through the body in a regular way, the fascia starts to polarize. Once the fascia polarizes, you've got this new and secondary electrical grid turning on, And you can start to work with that because it becomes electrical. And Tai Chi, like your movements become much differently. Like my perception of movement when I am focused or not scared or scattered is it doesn't feel physical. Like it feels like an electrical thing moving. So, and then it also harvests energy. Like you don't need as much food because you can kind of draw energy in from your perception. Like you can make your resonant field flux a little bit. And so as that thing turns on, I think with deeper meditative practices, and this is where we get into the floating and the even crazier power.
Yeah, go for it.
Is the fascia, I think, starts to polarize the bones, which are also piezoelectric. And once you get bone polarization, bones are what you move objects with, like in the physical world. It's when you ground into your bones, and they're also, a high-density crystalline structure. So if you can get your consciousness in there, aka if you can polarize it enough to where you can feel it, and a lot of people end up in what I think is listening to their bones as antennas on DMT and stuff like that, because you do something like DMT and it shuts down all of your activity in your brain, so all of a sudden that all of its rhythms snap perfectly because you're not screwing with it anymore, and so you get this really rapid polarization effect all the way down to the bones. And I think those things are like large bandwidth transmitters, like your skull, especially since it's right next to your brain and all that other stuff. But lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
I was pretty interested even just what you said there about DMT. Like that's sort of an idea that, when you say shut down, do you mean just like shut down like the gate mechanism that keeps the filters up in some degree?
Yeah, it blocks most of your synapses, which are the folds, right? So you just have electrical activity not resonating with itself, and since it's not resonating or most of the resonance of our electrical activity is actually interfering with itself. So like you block that or whatever, or you induce a chemical very strong resonant pulse, which that could also be the thing of the pineal gland. It could induce like a very rhythmic resonant pulse. There's a couple of different ways I can imagine that this could be accomplished, but like you get it going and all of a sudden it starts inducing once the brain pattern becomes rhythmic, like it can do crazy things to the tissue really quickly. Like as far as I can tell, you can send these interesting little spiral patterns through your nervous system that lock your fascia into these spiral whatevers, and you can shoot all the energy over to the outside of your arm and block baseball bats and all sorts of other stuff like with it. It responds really, really quickly, which is like what you learn in martial arts. So like these polarization events, I think, can happen really quickly, but you just have to stop interfering with it because it's like what the system naturally wants to do it, and I think it has to do it to survive. Yeah. Which is why we have to sleep. Like you have to sleep, which is when you get out of your own way, and then your brain polarizes your body at night, and that's when you start you can start dreaming and astral traveling and projecting at night because you're polarized.
That's very I like how you're explaining that, because you're just saying stuff that I was about to ask, just getting into the topic of dream exploration and again, like from just breaking it down and just kind of using my own words here for a second, from like a logical point of view, it seems that the universe is doing this on purpose, where within the human body it sets up like this like gatekeeper mechanism that is constantly filtering out this reality, and by default it's on, and then it's like only in the process of sort of like relaxing where it sort of like allows itself to come off. But as soon as you move yourself out of that focus,
by default it's relaxed. It's so fascinating. Like whatever the laws of the universe are, they create whatever structures happening, whatever you happen to be. So the instant you stop trying to do that, you immediately and rapidly fall into resonance with your own internal order.
Yeah.
So that's where that's why we have alpha, beta, and gamma waves or whatever, is because like let's say that quantum mechanics is correct. Like as all of that stuff jumbles together to create atoms and molecules and that you might dig this, but as all that stuff jumbles together, like it's still basically a interference pattern of that original vibration. So your relaxation is just getting rid of the interference pattern that you're creating to see reality or to understand it, to know. Like all of your memories and stuff, they go through and they make things like black around the edges so you can see them. Like that's what each, everything that you know is a constant pulse out that creates a black spot there. So that's why you have skin. Every time you get sensation from your arm, your brain, some part of your mind goes, I know that's my arm, and they send out that counter pulse to like target it and track where it is, but that also makes the boundary. That's why you get a boundary there. And so you've drawn that boundary at your arm due to, like, you realize that when you got poked or touched, like right at this particular area of your sort of not really existent boundary self, like that's where pleasure and pain and stuff took place, but with the most intensity. So then you drew a skin boundary there or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So just keeping an eye on some of the stuff coming through the live chat, how would something such as sacred geometry, the idea that like the universe itself sort of fits within these consistent proportions and shapes that fractal out on each other, I'm just kind of curious, like how does sacred geometry sort of work in with this neurokinetic theory that we're working on tonight, and even like the idea of like cymatics, like everything is just like sound and vibration or whatever. I mean, we're kind of backstepping here, but
that stuff is it's fascinating. It's totally true and like 100% false depending on which side of the sacred geometry is. Basically the bars of the prison. So if you're on the outside, it's amazing, and if you're on the inside, it's you can study it, but you're really studying the thing that you are trapped by.
The crystallized version.
Like, well, yeah, because if you're not thinking with your whole body, you're thinking with your mind. Your understanding of sacred geometry is that of what you think about it. So you send out that sort of resonant pulse when you see all these fractals and these patterns, and it actually will infinitely separate you. The study of it, like it's a total wild goose chase. On the other side, it's a cool, like kind of fascinating thing by which the universe is built. But like if you're if you're trapped in your mind, sacred geometry is an infinite prison. Like if you escape your mind, sacred geometry is an interesting thing that your brain is doing to tell a story. Like it's definitely I've had a talk with some friends, and I've heard some other people rumor this. Like sacred geometry is something I would, if you're interested in waking up, I would definitely escape your mind before studying something that is basically mind crack.
Cool.
Although, no, I mean, we're all here for fun, so, you're not going to wake up or not, so don't scare anybody away from it, but, like, you're not going to have some giant insight or epiphany, I don't think, from studying it. I don't think it's going to get in the way of anything, and it'll make some awesome art and all that, but it's, like, it's
I mean, I think
it's awesome, but it's like any other idea.
Awesome.
The math, the thing with numbers and math and all of our sacred geometry is, as far as I can tell, at least in myself and from what I indicate from like my my practices, our sense of self and also therefore numbers is so fragmented that it's a little bit effed up. So like our sacred geometry is off because our numeric system is basically sort of this digital thing when it needs to be sort of a fractal analog quantum type math, something like vortex math or one of these other like fractal theories. Like our mathematics are totally screwed up. So I think all of that stuff might be like really, really fundamentally flawed, at least the way that we look at it with our math. Like, yeah. I don't know. My opinion on sacred geometry is all over the place. Like, I don't think it's total BS, but I do know that we're so confused and backwards that a lot of our analysis is maybe confusing, even especially the old stuff, because we're not the old people that understood this. We're a new organism right now. We're not the old. So the people that understood it aren't us,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the people that have been studying it, that we're us, had the same delusion that we do. So I think it needs more study from more really awake people who aren't worshiping it, who are like very unknowing themselves and are capable of looking at that stuff without being confused.
Yeah. I mean, just closing off on the topic of sacred geometry for now, like I think for my own perspective, the practicalness behind studying something such as sacred geometry is to help our mind be able to comprehend the concept of infinity at the very least. Like you said, when you take a box and you put a box inside of itself sort of thing, you can do that with other sacred geometrical shapes. And also just seeing, I mean, there's kind of a good quote that actually came up in the Journey to Lucidity movie, which, shameless plug, is now available on special edition DVD and would make a great gift for someone who you care about to share with this Christmas if you want to help shift consciousness. So paradigmshiftcentral.com/GTL, and you can order that for $20, and it'd be greatly appreciated because it's going to help support the sequel. But I was going to say, within the movie, Halcyon, he says like, he's looking at the pine cone and he's saying, do I have to understand like how this pine cone came to be? And he says like, no, sometimes the most important thing is to simply to be in awe of its creation and to understand that the creation that it is the same thing that I am, basically, which is, just going back to the idea of sacred geometry. I think it's practical to be able to see the micro, macro. But so what I'm particularly interested in, since we only got 35 minutes left, I do want to just sort of let you just literally just keep putting out any information that you want to hit upon. I do have a couple of questions, and I'll ask two of them now, and I'll ask another one later. But I'm really just interested in hearing a little bit more from, like, what are your thoughts on dreams, and also what are your thoughts on, like, the psychedelic experience, like, related to this theory? Because I think those two things are fundamental in themselves. And again, I'm just trying to understand those more by understanding your theory more, and by the idea that you're talking about with neurokinetics. But yeah, just putting it out there. What are your thoughts on dreams and the psychedelic experience? Like, what's going on with the brain is what I'm asking, or us rather.
It's not the brain. It's what I've been lecturing on. So
that's
like your consciousness is your whole body, right? Your brain is a file heading device. That's it. Like, it takes in your brain. It imagines a bunch of shit, right? It's all folded and complex. You can have a whole world up there in the brain, and that's why I'm saying that some of the stuff is like sort of seductive once it goes in there, because it can create a whole world that it thinks it gets from all the folding and everything that it has. But your body is like what's really tuning into most of reality, right? And so your brain's its main job is to create file headings for programs. Like, you could have a whole program that does this one thing, and your brain will give it a file heading of like dog. Mm-hmm. And so then you can move whole file headings around, aka concept. Like, I can say green pickle, and all of us are sort of moving a big package of concepts around everything that we have associated with pickle. That's kind of what the brain does. It doesn't like really perceive like your perception of reality and the intensity of the colors and the sounds and like where you think you are is mostly a body sense. Like, and so psychedelics, as far as I can tell, induce different rhythms through your fascia. So not only does your fascia polarize, but I think it polarizes in different shapes and in different ways. And so there's like it's incredibly parallel processes like I can't even describe. Like, you can have so many different types of waves running through the fascia like all at once, and it's the sum total of all of those waves. So you can be running. That's why it's so bad to lie about yourself. That's why lying about yourself screws everything up, because you have this wave running through your body that says one thing, and then there's a counter wave that you're doing, and so it actually depolarizes you because that stuff interferes with each other. Like, when you're on psychedelics, it like sometimes I think they block they block some of the conditioning centers or some of the resonant nodes that are not the heart from ringing so loudly, and then they polarize you in a particular way, and that particular way, I think, is what tunes you into the intelligence of the particular plant or substance or something like that, or whatever realm it's going to tune you into, is based on like what kind of waves it's making your brain send out. The pattern of the waves that your brain sends out is how it sort of polarizes your body in the order it polarizes things and the shape and the speed and all that, and that's what determines what you pick up on and tune into. Like, it's not, like, everyone thinks that everything is tripping around in the brain, and it seriously is, it's about as important to consciousness as the ignition to the car.
Yeah,
like,
just going
so
back,
I
want to I do want to let you just continue, but I just really wanted to hit upon what we had touched upon earlier, the idea of like literally like seeing with your whole body. I love that idea. I love what just even thinking about that, you know, like we think like we think that we need our eyes to see, but like that's only just like a fraction of the idea of that, like all of our body is sort of seeing and listening and just absorbing all, like, you know, vibrations, sounds, and light. But continue.
So
continue.
it's the way the fascinating thing about seeing, like, so this would be a cool power or something like that.
Right.
So I've seen, like, so I did DMT once, and I was with a sober sitter, and I was seeing through my skull with my head buried in her lap and describing everything going on around me, 360 degrees.
Right.
Like her mind was blown.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so like, if you think about all the data that's coming in from your optic nerve, right, there's a ton of stuff, and that's going into your body. And basically, if you can, all that information is changing everything, right? How we were talking about before, it's just this giant data wave cascade coming in, and it's sending these giant ripples throughout your whole body. It's changing the electrical state all the way down to your toes. So if you can learn to feel that, you start pulling out more detail about color, more detail about texture, more detail about distance and contrast and all this other stuff. And the more that you feel your whole body while you're listening to your whole body, your vision starts to pop. That's why the colors pop on psychedelics, in my opinion, is because you're seeing with your whole body. And so that is the practice for learning how to see with your eyes closed, because you are that connected. So you turn your fascia on that hard, and there is a similar pattern coming through you from sight, sound, photons hitting your skin, who knows what other sort of radiation bouncing around, that is changing your skin in the same way that can create that pattern that you saw with your eyes. And it's just a matter of meditating, studying to try and feel how an object can change your body with your eyes closed, but it's causing the same detailed change that your eyes were inducing in your body. You just learn to listen that hard with your whole body, and then all of a sudden there's you get so plugged in and so sensitive that you're feeling the world as accurately as your eyes are picking up photons.
Yeah, that definitely brings me back to like my own personal experience that I had with salvia, and there's a video of it on my YouTube channel where, in a very literal way, I experienced being able to see while my eyes were still closed. And it was like kind of like seeing in kind of like, and it's hard to put in words. I mean, there was form, and it was more of like an energetic sight. Like, is that what do you think happened to me when I was able to literally see, like, without my eyes open when I was on salvia?
I think your fascia basically, like, it turns into your body turns into an antenna that's capable of picking up other energies, as well as your eye picks up photons. Like all the electrical activity of your body, like, it just morphs and combines into all these. Like, each one of your chakras is better seen as an eyeball.
Yeah.
The way that people like, it's a sensory. Each chakra is a sensory organ. You know, like each organ is shaped in such a way that I think if it gets the right nerve firing patterning into it, it creates an EMF field that is good at interacting with a particular type of radiation or a particular type of energy. So each one of them tune you into a different type of reality, and we're all kind of doing it just really subtly, and so it's like people's unconscious stuff. But like, if people just believed in the power of chilling out and not. Okay, so this is the other really important thing. If I wanted to explain one really important thing, it's listening. listening is sending out, it's canceling your counterpulse. It's like it's trying to bring you back to your resting state. And so listening, the reason, okay, so when you know what an object is, like when you see an object, that's telling, and that creates the object. And so this is why listening is more powerful if you actually understand it. By listening, you're attempting to return to baseline in the middle of the chaos. And so, like, imagine if you're laying down on the floor in a completely relaxed pose or in like a floating hot tub or one of those float tanks. You're not moving. That's like your baseline state, right? So if you can recreate that state while, let's say, you're standing up or sitting down on the cushion, if you can recreate that same totally non-doing state on the cushion, you do that by sending out a pulse that sort of resonates with that fundamental rhythm in your body that wants to already be happening. You sort of just automatically start going into this rhythm that polarizes your body, right? So you study that rhythm meditatively. You study that state, and the study of that state is like literally listening or wondering or not knowing. And then you figure out how to do that in more and more movement activities. So at first standing slowly, you stand and you listen. And as you step, the impulse to step, you're also balancing it. You're adding an additional impulse that keeps that same rhythm moving through your whole body, even though you're adding to it. You're adding to it, and also you are still recreating it. And since you're recreating the main rhythm, you know everything that's happening because you're returning to baseline, so you're kind of absorbing it actively. And that's what makes it, you start to be able to become more and more conscious and active. Most people never take it off the cushion because they're not active. Like, you have to really figure out how to get the listening activity. And this is where high-level martial arts come from, because like somebody's trying to punch you in the face. Can you listen to that? If you can, you maintain your I'm connected to everything power. If they make you flinch, then you lose it. And so, or like if you go and you meditate all morning, like when somebody pisses you off, like when you flinch, you lose your connected to everything power. So you got to find it in complete stillness first, just chilling on the cushion or from a mental breakdown or something like that. And then you study it, and you study the hell out of it. And then you try and make it even deeper and deeper and deeper. And then you figure out you stop trying to tell life what it is with the counter impulse of the nervous system, and what you're doing is actually sending the counter impulse to return your body to the resting state always. And then that also gives you the input of what you're dealing with, because you're having to completely match it to stay neutral. And paradoxically, by staying neutral like that, which requires that counter activity, that maintains your polarity and your duality in a perfect state, so your consciousness stays high.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, that for me, when I hear that, I simplifying it, I think of like the idea of Bruce Lee, like when he says like, "Be water, my friends." Like, I mean, and he explains it, like the idea when like an opponent comes at you, you like absorb, and then you can strike at when you see the opportunity. But yeah, definitely like just being in a higher conscious state.
Thing is like you can only change what you accept, like into you. Like imagine if you fell like from 5 feet off the ground and you didn't accept that, none of it goes into your legs or your body, and so you hit stiff-legged and it like you don't have any control over it. But like when you land, you can accept the force of your weight and the ground into your body, into your springs, and absorb it and discharge it, and you have control over it, but only if you accept it.
Right. Okay.
And
well,
that gets into some crazy shit. But
that does. Well, we're at 2:22 left in the show as it is right now. So just passing through that gate right there, and there's still like some definite key stuff to be able to hit upon, and I think we've already been covering quite a bit, and just bringing it back to the basics. I mean, just like reminding people of like how we can work with our body, because I mean, so much of what we're doing within our day-to-day life is just being like filled with something external, some sort of like distraction that is like defining what our like vibration or our field is at the moment, instead of being able to like choose what it is within that, again, like going into that meditative state, but carrying that with you throughout the day, and then being able to dodge bullets when you need to, or rather, was the quote from the Matrix? It's like,
when the time comes, you won't have to.
Yes.
That's the other interesting thing. Because I want some people to get this, because it's like basically I feel like I've scientifically proven how not being a douchebag and how being honest and upholding your own moral values and stuff like that, like, actually improves your health.
The scientific theory of not being a douchebag. I think you could write a book on that one.
Right. No, it's like, that's what, because it's like people are like, well, like, because they're, you do shitty things because you think it'll help you. So it's like, if you can scientifically prove that there's no way to do a shitty thing without it like really screwing you over, because it's like, this is your own internal resonance, right? Anytime you lie, cheat, or steal, it decreases your resonance. So you have to like keep people further, like, it just makes you dumber. I don't know. Anyway.
Anyways. Okay. All right. Well, I will.
I have a lot of anger.
We're all dealing with our own stuff, but I mean, being able to listen and observe the inner self is a huge part. Okay, so I did have a question going back to the dream topic, and then there was one more thing that I wanted to get into, and I'm also looking for any people who are in the chat and just sort of what question might you have for Kurt while we still have him here, or some sort of generic topic that you would be curious about. And okay, so with the going back to the topic of dreams, what my question really is so, like, Kurt, what is your understanding of like what we are without our physical body, or like as consciousness experiencing itself outside of the physical body? Like, what can you sort of break down the metaphysical nature of like what we really are before we're physical? And if that's, think you know where I'm coming from, or
it's, I mean, yeah, but it'll just sound like cliches. Like, it's like your experience is the sum total of all the electrical activity resonating in your body. Well, who's watching that? Everything around you is watching that. As far as like what we are in a more like sense of the storytelling thing, we're literally like sort of a weave of light from the sun, like woven in sort of a tapestry in a way, like via DNA and plants and all that. It like weaves light. We just weave light. And so you are kind of like, as you fall into a deeper level of perception, like you fall into your genetic memory, which is kind of like all of the things that caused the sun to experience a desire, that caused it to sort of change itself in that form that you're currently in, and also between forms that share the same genes, which tune into the same sort of desire. And so you fall through that, and you'll end up feeling like the consciousness of a star or a solar system. And then I'm sure you can go through the rabbit hole there. But I mean, that's all just kind of like stories based on like, if you practice any of this stuff, it'll break down. Like, you practice the meditation of neurokinetics and maintain that consciousness while you're researching or thinking about nerves, and like you obviously see that a nerve and an action potential is like the tip of a giant 10-dimensional spinning iceberg of some sort that you're kind of dimly aware of, but like you can really see that the entire vocabulary and framework of this theory of everything is completely bullshit once it actually levels you up. And so, I have no idea what the hell's going on in dreams. Is the short answer.
That's a good answer. I'll take it. I like what you said, though, the idea that like the sun weaves us, like we are the weave of the sun. I think that would be kind of a cool way, because some people literally don't even think about that, like the people who are just really distracted, so to speak. Like the simple idea that the sun that we see in the sky every day like literally is us. I remember thinking about that way back in the day when I was shifting paradigms and stuff, and just the idea of like we literally are light. Like, I just think that's such a cool thing, because it's so easy to believe that, like, we're just like this physical thing, but even this physical thing, like, again, we forget that is in itself just light, just in different form. But
yeah, man,
so
DNA like just captures light and turns it into frickin' objects. It's kind of crazy. Like, you look at it like
that's pretty
plants
crazy.
capture the light and they turn it into a particular type of objects that animals capture, and the animal DNA goes in and sucks in like all of this stuff, and then it weaves it into freaking humans.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, I got there's an idea that I had a while back, and then it like went away from me for a while. But I think it sort of came back to me the other day while I was walking my dogs, and I just kind of want to put this out here, and I'm curious to you guys in the live chat tell me if this makes sense, or just putting it out there in general for Kurt and everyone. But it was basically this idea that a lot of people think that there's the idea of the Big Bang, in the sense that there was like blackness and then there was like light, or like an explosion, and light got sent out. A way how I sort of think it may have actually happened is that as things sort of go back to what they originally were, what we originally start off of, imagine it more as just like a huge like cloud of white, like just a big like cloud of white, and then it's not so much that light shines, but it's just more so the much that there are an infinite amount of like mini black holes in every single location that is like pulling the light away in such a way that it perceives it to us to be like a beam or a source point of it. So like in the idea that like if you have a dark room and you turn on a light switch, it's not so much that the light from the light bulb just like shines out into the room, but it's almost like the exact opposite, where it's something to do with more like these mini black holes that exist at every single point activate or turn on, and then it like nullifies the space of where the light is in I don't know, am I on to something? What do you think, Kurt? I mean,
what are we talking about?
Well, that would answer my light in itself.
I think the Big Bang is basically like the first, like it's the first mode of consciousness turning on, right? But like you caught, it's fractal, right? So the Big Bang that we're talking about, that we're here intellectualizing with our thoughts in our head, through the even more conceptual medium of vocalization, like the Big was like, I think it was probably the activation of the first, it's the first brain activity when that thing turns on, like your brain rhythms. And at first it's like really light and diffuse because the nerves aren't folded and all that. And then as the nerves fold, you get those funny little interference patterns. Like slight folding is the atoms and everything forming, and this is all done in womb. And then everything starts to fold together. You get different sort of objects and all that, because all that light is traveling at the speed of who knows what. And then eventually you get dogs and cats and humans. But I think it's like we're each one of us ourselves is a brain fold for the other one. So like all of our action potentials and stuff goes and hits everyone else and resonates back. So like we're literally like sort of a resonant of that first mind turning on, and the first human that could come up with the idea of the Big Bang. Like we're resonating that Big Bang, or that perception of the universe. Like we didn't even have it. Like we used to have a perception of just the Earth, right? So we didn't have a Big Bang before that. So like the Big Bang that we're talking about and all this stuff that we're seeing and way up and all that is like like the data that we gather through our telescopes is like very much filtered by how we think and all that. Like so the Big Bang is something that your brain started doing. Like it has to be. There's no other answer out there. So you can look at like what other brains similar to yours outside of you have done.
Yeah, I think going back to what I was trying to explain with words, but what I was kind of getting at was almost like what the Dalai Lama says, that every atom is a black hole. I was just sort of tying in that idea in a way that practically made sense, and if you can imagine that, it just sort of it brings some ideas in the question. But okay, so with 12 minutes left in the show as it is, also just sort of still looking for a couple more questions. If you guys do have questions for Kurt, please private message us through the chat, and we will be announcing the winner for the 2 chances for people to win shift buttons by the end of this episode. First one, if you still want to get in on that draw, send a message to facebook.com/ParadigmShiftRadio and just tell us how you found the show or what your thoughts are on it, and that you would like some free shift buttons, and also to the winner of the prize for the Paradigm Shift Mindfulness Games through the ParadigmShiftCentral.com/games and beating the high score that Jason currently holds of 61,500. But we'll get there eventually near the end of the episode. And there's a couple things I could want to talk about, but I'll just get into the one that I had from a while back because we may need a little bit of time just on this. And I'm just really interested to like hear your thoughts on it, Kurt, and that's why I wanted to ask. But it basically has to do like with the idea of like, what does the role of like cultivating like male sexual energy have to tie in with our ability to become like more conscious? Like, just, where do you see something such as like the actual like literally seminal fluid, and how does that play? Because the fact that it's connected to the spinal cord and it like can literally like be sent up into the brain, there's something going on there. And I'm just curious as to what you've sort of pieced together in terms of its role and its how it ties in.
So the physical generation of semen requires a certain amount of energy, but like for this whole topic, it's much easier to boil it down to desire. Like desire is polarization, right? Like it's why does something want to move? It's polarized. It's either polarized, and so it's going to be attracted towards it, or it's going to be repulsed away from it. And so to sort of change yourself or to do anything at all, it requires desire. If you're trying to change the way that your DNA is expressing itself, or you're trying to change your brain structure or anything, you need a lot of desire. And so anytime that you totally satiate that desire, which is going to be blowing your load, so to speak, you are completely satisfied. And for a moment there, you totally depolarize, like you discharge. It's a discharge of your energy. And that it's not so much the semen as it is the, when you don't like, so life doesn't ever sense a discharge. Energy flows both ways in life. It's only like dead things do they need to return to neutral. Like life is happy with it going either way. So like if you're fully conscious during the ejaculation in a way and still capable of wanting more afterwards, then the seminal output I don't think is all that detrimental, or sometimes it doesn't even happen. But it's mostly about desire. Like if you're eating all the time past full, you're depolarizing. If you're having sex all the time to the point to where you're not building up desire, you're depolarizing. So the tantra practice is to be sort of having sex and still polarizing. It almost polarizes you even more, but it's difficult because that's like such a huge temptation. And that's kind of the whole process behind like fasting and everything, because desire is desire is desire is desire. And the more desire you have in you, the more polarized you sort of are. It's sort of a shortcut to chilling out. It's like the left-hand path. That's why it's kind of dangerous. It leads to power, like cultivation of desire. It leads to the ego being able to polarize the body. All of the effort paths, which isn't necessarily bad, but I wouldn't recommend it until you're outside of the ego. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that is a good point. That is a good point. Like the idea of being like outside the ego. Is that maybe just with sort of like last like few minutes left in the show, literally just kind of want you to use this time to just remind us again and like any practical tips that you can give people in terms of like diet. But yeah, how can we go about like leveling ourselves up and really being able to utilize this understanding that you've been sharing with us tonight of just our interconnectedness of everything and the fact that we are not just our brains, but we are our body listening?
I would just say that like you're like all the little things that you think don't count or that you can hide, they count. So like your diet should be honest. Like you should have joy in your diet and joy in what you eat. And and that means the whole food chain, the whole supply chain, whatever's happening. You need to take into account everything, like the political systems that you participate in. Like if you vote, like, or you support taxes, do you really support people being forced to pay for programs that you might enjoy that you think is good? Do you really morally agree with these things? Do you really morally agree? Are you honest with your relationships and like realize that there's no sneaking by, like, because you hold the thoughts of what you really are, and then you have the perceptions of what you're doing, or vice versa. And if those are not in alignment, then they create an interference pattern in your body, and you will lose consciousness. You will become more and more dull, and you will go through life and you will not like see or feel things, and like life will get more and more miserable. And like those little white lies that you do to try and make life better, it's an impossibility for them to make your life better. Like, it's a literal impossibility. Like, this is a understanding of neurology and biology that like sort of proves that you can't bullshit. And that's all you have to do to advance on your spiritual path, or quote unquote find yourself, is to be yourself. And there's absolutely no cheating. Like, you don't let yourself cheat. You can't do it.
Okay, quick question tying in with the food and diet thing. People are sort of bringing up some ideas in the live chat. Like, what if you have a hard time being honest with your food when your food is like GMOs and this and that? And like,
if that's all you can eat, if you can't make a different choice, then be happy with that and survive as a being. If you can make a different choice, then you need to make that different choice, or you need to learn how to eat less. I don't know in everyone's situation. Nobody knows your situation. Like, you know what's honest and you know what's your best. You say, I wish I could do better. Well, can you? If the answer is no, then don't worry about it. If the answer is yes and you want to experience higher consciousness, then do it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay. Any other just more practical tips, like any particular workout exercise, meditation exercise? What do you think would work?
Just know that like you can always feel deeper if you're doing exercise and stuff like that. Like, we could do a whole show on the exercise mechanics of neurokinetics. That's kind of how I stumbled onto it, was like figuring out how this stuff could help you do handstands and yoga and learn faster. But like, you can always listen to the activity deeper and always become more efficient at it. And if you do that to an obsessive compulsive degree of like questioning, like the deepest level that you can question every movement or whatever you're working on, that deepest level of questioning, of trying to get to that point to where you don't know why you're not better or why you can't do, like, you just smash your face into that unknowing thing and it pulls out weird stuff. But like, if you start thinking you know, or you think you're using all the resources possible, then you kind of get stuck in your body, to where it's like it's just learning, man. You can learn forever and you can learn crazy stuff. That's
yeah, there's a lot to learn. So I guess just piecing together what you're sort of talking about here, I think one key thing that people can take from this is the idea of practicing meditation. Practice the art of listening to our body. Like, literally just sit there and meditate and listen to your body, and to be able to gain that present focus, that present awareness, that consciousness, and to be able to continue that with other exercises, with your yogas, and eventually things that are even just like more demanding and stuff. So I mean, for me, that would be like my hockey, or again, and then just taking that even further, just walking down the street and everything you do. I mean, mindfulness, I think, should be the common objective on all of our plates right now at this moment. So, yeah, again, Kurt, just any other sort of final points here, and then we're going to wrap this up with the raffle draw.
I guess I picture mindfulness as like realizing that your whole body is an antenna for every single sense. And so you just walk around like you're a giant 5-starred electrical radio dish picking up on everything, and you pick up on sensations in your body by feeling. So as you go through the day, you're not being pulled out of your body by your vision. You're not being pulled out of your body by your sight. You realize that you're experiencing that in your body, and then you feel your whole body all the time. It's like, it's a very physical thing to me, and then that makes everything sort of, it literally makes it psychedelic.
Yeah.
That's kind of what that's the mindfulness, is just stay in your body. Like, don't get pulled out as if that sense or that object or that thing is out there. You're listening to that neural flux field. Like, when you get tricked into thinking that it's out there, you're sending that counter signal that dampens the flux field to make it an object. Like, you just got to keep it in you. Like, all of your vision is in you. It gets weird. I don't know.
It does.
You look at your body.
It gets pretty trippy. Okay, well, I think again, just one thing I could give to people, because I've tried this in my own experience. Try sitting down, meditating, do an open-eyed meditation, even try looking at yourself in a mirror, but keep your gaze very still, and with the idea of listening with your entire body, and be able to let yourself absorb like more of the light, and you will notice that there will actually be like a change in your vision, and you'll notice that like things get a little a little psychedelic, and you'll sort of like see that, and that's from my own personal experience. But with that said, and yeah, one other last point, because I didn't totally get mentioned, and then we're getting into the draw. Just going back to what I was talking about, just with like cultivating like the sexual energy and stuff. Quick tip, I would just say, if you are cultivating the sexual energy, the purpose, part of the intention behind doing that is to be able to like utilize it into like a creative outlet. So, I mean, if that's something you're working with, like holding on to like your seminal fluid, like then be able to transform that for the greater good of humanity into a creative project of some sort is my suggestion. So now, with that said, going to do the actual draw. We only got 1 minute left on the show, or 90 seconds rather. So with that said, if everybody just wants to give a little drum roll here, I'm just going to do an ohm as I pull the draw for the free shift button. So, okay, and the person who we got is Kyle. So Kyle is going to be getting some free shift buttons, and of course, Jason is also the winner of the Paradigm Shift Mindfulness Games through the website with his high score of 61,500 in Geometry Wars Flash. So congratulations to Jason, also going to get some shift buttons. And of course, if you didn't get shift buttons but you still want some, order some now. You can order some with the promo code PSR, or you can order some just with the promo code GIFT, and to be able to get some bonus orders, some bonus buttons in your order. They're awesome for handing out during Christmas, and yeah, you'll have a great time doing it. So, Kurt, just any last word? We're going to wrap this up. And also, there's going to be an after party. Keep an eye open for the link on the facebook.com/Paradigm Shift Radio Party if you want to get in the after party and continue the conversation. But may go over a little time here, so shout out to everybody who's been listening in live. Post your Facebook accounts to everybody in here so that you guys can hook up with each other. So that's the last thing I'll be able to fit in, and going into like bonus time in the next couple of seconds. But Kurt, just being able to finish with a proper outro, just any last thoughts that you want to give our audience?
No, just thank you very much. And if anybody has any questions they would like me to address, just post them on or message the Facebook page that I have up for the neurokinetics, and I'll throw them up on one of my YouTube accounts. And yeah, I don't know. I personally did questions about like movement and diet and all that other stuff, but yeah.
Sounds good. Cool, man. Well,
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I would love to be able to just continue the conversation a little bit further on another episode. So just let me know when that might work for you, because I know our audience really appreciates you sharing our time with us, and it's always a pleasure to be able to just practice talking about the things we get a chance to talk about here on Paradigm Shift Radio. So, of course, check out the main website, ParadigmShiftCentral.com. Continue to share this episode after you have listened to it. Continue to get the message out there as we continue to become more aware of this reality and our place within it. So, Kurt, you can join me in saying farewell to the internet as I cue up the outro music. So, farewell, internet. Bye-bye. Bye for now, internet. So. All right. Okay. See you in the future. All right. Thanks, Kurt. That was fun.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Paradigm Shift Radio. If you would like to connect with people where you are and continue the conversations further, then check out ParadigmShiftCentral.com/buttons to order your supply of shift buttons to share with people to help invite them to this global project, while also helping make new friends and building local community where you are. Shift buttons are tools to hack the matrix and tap into the synchronistic nature of reality to accelerate our collective awakening. Enter the promo code PSR into your order to receive additional bonus buttons to your supply. Thank you again, and one love.